I'm Deepak Chopra. You're watching New Realities.
Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm here with the Hurtaks and their new book, or part of their new book, called Sound, Profound Experiences with Chanting, Toning, Music, and Healing Frequencies, published by Sacred Spaces. It's just out, and we're going to be talking about the nature of sound as it's seen from the perspective of archaeological, linguistic, vibrational, and spiritual evolution. So thank you, Hurtaks, Drs. JJ and Desiree. One thing I want to start off with is that Ashwala de Lubitz, the great mystic in Egypt, in the Temple of Man, said, sound created the ear. Do you know what he meant by that?
Yes, and matter of fact, if you look at the ancient acupuncture charts from China, the embryo, a newborn child, is pictured with the earlobe representing the head in a position upside down, representing the small musical instrumentation of the ear. The ear is exemplified in the very beginning of the Torah scripture when it speaks about the word or the vibration of God moving over the still waters. The word is there at the beginning of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the word. That is the higher vibration. So it is clear in all major traditions, the ear, the Shema, is the call to higher consciousness and realization.
Right, and inside the ear, we don't see it, but anyone who knows biology will tell you, is the cochlea. And that cochlea is very similar to a Fibonacci spiral. And it just shows you that everything in the universe has some greater energy or some greater power. And we believe that everything in the universe is connected with sound vibration.
Right, in the beginning was the word, like you said, but in your archaeological linguistic studies, you've came up with some very important findings.
Right, and this ties into Ashwala de Lubitz and others like him, because we discovered that there is a musical tonality built into the very structure of the Egyptian rooms.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, in a book that Desiree and I wrote called Consciousness, Energy, and Future Science, there's a chapter that we have on Egypt, and I'm holding up now the diagram of the Sphinx project. As you can see, the modalities, the, shall we say, inner geometries and curvatures of a room or chamber inside the Great Pyramid of Egypt. This is simply a modification of the sound structures we measured in all of the major pyramids in Giza. So the bottom line here is we are musical instruments. We are a body electric, but we need a consciousness to pull us into a greater musical symphony. And that's why there's so many subtitles or disciplines, from plant communication to cosmic intelligence, that is basically waking us up to a larger soundscape of life.
But Desiree, why was sound so important to the ancients?
Well, I think to the ancients and to the contemporary and for our future, because sound is everything. We look at the cells in our body, they're actually vibrating. You may not be able to hear them, but there's still this vibration. And when you can analyze that, you can actually put a symphony together. This is what Kepler was looking at. Kepler was looking at the different planets, and he thought there was the music of the spheres, and he attributed certain sounds to certain planets at certain times. So one planet actually could have several sounds. Everything is vibration. I think that's our motto for the book. But in addition to that, that means that everyone has their own vibration. Everyone has their own tone that they put into the cosmic whole.
So we are musicologists, social scientists, linguists, but also those who have been able to work with leading musicologists like Alan Howarth, was working with Star Trek, special music effects, Alice Coltrane, the mother of American jazz music, others.
Steve Halpern, the founder of spiritual New Age music.
The father of New Age music. All of them have been connected with the Academy for Future Science, which is science guided by consciousness and musical vibration. In fact, the keys of Enoch cannot be understood without music and vibration. And this is why we pictured the return of the dove on the cover, which means higher sound communication that opens the seven seals or or the hand clap on 7 different levels.
No, I like what you're saying because we all have our own unique vibration, which is our real essential name. But I want to go just a little deeper and talk about the magic of hearing the universe as incarnational beings, as the simulation of the divine. How is it that we're here to hear the sound? What is the spiritual evolution? Because you have a chapter in here called Sound Waves and Spirit, so talk about that.
Well, I would like to say, of course, there's the big contention in philosophy is if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, does it make a sound? And I would say yes, because the tree itself is part of the cosmic symphony. And so everything in life, whether it's the birds, the bees, the animals, all are connected with sound frequencies, even those that you don't literally hear, like a tree or a plant. We work with Marcel Vogel
At IBM.
and he was able to really communicate with plants. And of course, in this book, we talk with our friends, Darren Curtis and Bradley Pitt, who have used this device, which they created, but also Damenhor has a similar device where you put an anode on one of the leaves and another into the soil, and you can literally get the plants to sing. And sometimes they're quiet, but if you give them energy, if you talk around them, move around them, they start making sound. They put together 15 plants to make literally a symphony.
And they're part of the book.
Right.
So this book traces really the whole profile of the human, particularly why we're in this shape as a musical instrument. We are a body electric, waking up to our cosmic potential. And AT&T, American Telephone and Telegraph, way back in the 1950s, were able to hear the soundscape of messages from radio and even early television programs going into space. The fact that even Carl Sagan would laugh at the notion that we can still hear the I Love Lucy programs in space. How is it possible? Because we are a tuning fork attuned to the cosmic vibrations within and without. We are a musical receptor and sender of mind over matter signals. All life is vibration, and because of that, we are the instruments of a micro-universe of sound.
Well, we're just going through the highlights in the book. So one key aspect of sound, that going back to Pythagoras and coming right up to the present time with
I would say NASA and
Emoto
Okay.
is the geometry in sound, though, before we do that.
Right, so there's something called cymatics. It was before Hans Jenny, but he was a Swiss inventor, and so he actually brought it to life. And so what you can do is you can take frequency vibrations. Darren Curtis actually did this for us, creating his own cymatic device. You take frequency vibrations of sound and you put them either with sand or with other magnets, and as you change the sound, you're taking a picture of what's happening to the sand or to the magnets, and they're shifting. Every sound seems to have a different geometry, and we have a few of those pictures in the book.
But what's the relationship between sound and imaging? Why is that important? How does that affect us?
I think that question was answered by Namjoon Paik, an American Korean who came to Cal Arts in the early 70s. We were on the faculty together with the School of Critical Studies in Music, who developed the first video synthesizer, showing how the thoughts and even the voices regulate the imprint we see on an oscilloscope, showing that there's a bioelectric coupling, we would call a coordination, built into the way we think and produce sound waves. And if we are positive, we have a Buddha-like nature or Christ-like nature, we begin to electrify with greater energy and holistic biolumination. If we are passive or even restrictive in the way we think, that lowers the vibratory rate. And this was studied by the Academy of Science and Medicine in Los Alamos, California in the 1970s by Elmer Green and others, who realized that if we dampen our soundscape, we can affect the psychology of what we're looking at, what we're doing, and how we relate to the universe in general.
Well, I want to take that one step further, because we're here in Sedona right now, and many people also work with sound healing. I believe that everything, as I mentioned earlier, is its own musical symphony. And so the vibrations of what creates me, whether it's the 5 fingers and 5 toes versus something else, or whether it's the way the bones are divided, all of that is geometry, and geometry is sound. Sound is also geometry. So you put that together, you go back to Royal Raymond Rife, who said, let me help to try to heal the body with sound frequencies. Now you jump forward to modern times, and you have a company called NovoCure, which gives you sound frequencies to help stop, we'll say, cancer cells from dividing all the time. And they're FDA approved, they're used worldwide, and they understand sound is important. They use something called tumor treating fields. Now, it's a field, it's an energy. You don't hear it when you're under the therapy, but as I mentioned, every sound is a geometry, and every geometry is a sound. So once we understand the vibrations of our body, we understand not only how we got here, who we are, but how we can interact and heal each other and help each other.
So our book really is a blueprint of consciousness and music from A to Z, breaking down into independent frequencies, modalities, and even, should we say, archaeological as well as oceanography. That we hear the sounds of the dolphins, we hear the sounds of echoing acoustical frequencies in the pyramids, for example, in Mexico, and each of them realize that they both share common features, right? The infrared to the ultraviolet, and we found that a certain frequency of F sharp, a light manifestation took place in the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and we see this in the picture that was taken, remarkably as it may sound and seem. Even the Egyptian guards were caught off guard, quote unquote, when they saw a standing column or wave of light manifest inside the Grand Gallery because of the shape and what we believe to be the geometric form of energy that was collected. The standing waves produced a superluminal light burst. Ironically, the guards and the people we worked with on the top of the pyramid at the same time began to dance because they felt a momentary shift of energy. In essence, the Great Pyramid is a musical broadcasting machine. It is a basic geometry of the pyramidal brain cells within our mind and how we can cooperate, shall we say, as a musical machine in co-creation.
Well, I think all temples are like that. The temples themselves, especially the very ancient ones, were designed for sound. We went many times to the area of Tikal, Guatemala, and when we were there, one time we were standing way up on top of one of the main pyramids in the square, and the other person who's down at the base can hear perfectly what's being said. And Dr. Hurtak, say what else you experienced there.
It was a female voice that suddenly began to sing in harmony. And I had this recorded by Henry Belk of the Belk Foundation that did all of the leading research with Dr. Andrei Puharich and other experts back in the 1960s and 70s, particularly with the healers of the Philippines and Mexico. In short, Tikal means the city of sound. And there we were on top of one of the pyramids, and I was singing, and a female voice came. I had the tape of that example of Mind Over Matter analyzed by Sela Vadaci, the famous Romanian orchestra leader, and he said that there was definitely a paraphysical frequency that was activated at that particular point on top of the pyramid.
So I wasn't singing, there was no women around, it was late at night. Took place in the early 80s, and when he was singing, there was this female voice that was
heard it too?
Oh yeah, it's on tape. Okay. That was in harmony. It wasn't even just repeating him. It wasn't an echo. It actually went into other harmonics.
What was happening there, you think?
Well, we were trying to activate the temples, and
the temples were arranged like an orchestra pit with the various instrumentations illustrated by different shapes of the pyramids, platforms, and other columns that were part of why Tikal was called the city of sound.
So these ancient sites, even Egypt, even the temple in Chichen Itza,
exactly
have
has the Quetzal bird. If you stand in a certain place with the steps going up there to the main pyramid of Chichen Itza, you can create this Quetzal
why
bird.
was that so important to the ancient? Maybe the extraterrestrials.
In addition to bringing people into harmony, I believe the temples were for reconnection, and it wasn't extraterrestrials. I believe that by certain sound frequencies, you open a type of portal of energy. And this book is designed in 3 sections. Dr. Jack and I discuss plant music, music of the spheres, healing practices with sound in the first part, to name a few. And then people come in and talk about their own experiences with music in part 2. And then in part 3, we're able to say about the sacred vibrations that we connected with in the King's Chamber and other parts of the pyramid. And we also give certain mantras for people to use, because literally it's opening a tear in the sky. It's opening a portal when you are bringing those vibrations and frequencies together. It's healing the body, but it's also healing the soul.
That's why this is such an important book that covers so much. The one other piece I want to bring out is the brainwave frequencies that Robert Monroe discovered as it affects consciousness. Talk about that.
Well, actually, Dr. Hurtak back in the 70s was doing biofeedback training, also using frequencies of the mind.
With Joe Camilla from the University of Chicago, even with colleagues at Los Angeles, at Jet Propulsion Lab, who were training astronauts who would go into space and could use the modulations of mind control to keep quiet if there was a technical misfunction, as well as to communicate through mind over matter signals to mission control in Houston, Texas. So there was areas, shall we say, behind the scenes of how mind over matter communication, later illustrated by Ingo Swann at Stanford Research Institute, opened a whole new chapter. And now, this is the electrifying time when past, present, and future can combine in one book. And this is why this book, Sound, is so important, because sound is, shall we say, the link between Alpha and Omega.
Talk about the binaural beats as they affect thought frequencies and the ability for creative higher connections.
Well, this is the great genius of Robert Monroe and those who work with him at the Monroe Institute, realizing that the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain have, shall we say, a different vibratory level, and that is resolved by what we would call energies focused together in what we call the midbrain process of energy frequencies and harmonics.
Right, and so ultimately also, as Dr. Jack had taught back in the early 70s, there's the alpha brain frequency. That puts you into a state of meditation. So by using certain sound frequencies, you can move into that state of meditation much more, we'll say, simply and easily. So you can calm your body. And I think a lot of this has to do, we're not, in fact, there's a disclaimer in the book saying we're not trying to tell you that you can heal your body, because you have to tune into what's really needed for yourself.
And this is important because Steve Halpern, the father of New Age music, began to study and work with some of the mantras, providing different levels of biofeedback, what we will call the ability to synchronize both sides of the brain, the male and the female, into harmonic.
I mean, you're pointing out to me how important sound is. Of course it's important because we use it every minute, but there's sound frequencies coming right through here. And you mentioned plants, but I also want to bring in dolphins and whales that live in a sound environment. Can you talk?
Yes, John Stewart Reed has an associate, and he's done a lot of studies with this. So the dolphins put out these clicks and sound frequencies, sonar type of frequencies, and now we've been able to interpret what they're seeing. So where it stops and where it comes back to them, you can literally create everything around you just by frequency. You don't have to use your eyes, you can just use sound to create the images around you.
And this is why the dolphin is considered the policeman of the oceans. Over 600 different languages or signals the dolphin can respond to and protect people from, for example, sharks or dangerous situations, as we found through experts working in South Africa with using dolphins really around beach areas as early warning systems. So even the Navy was using dolphins as early warning probes.
Well, yeah, that goes back to the work of John Lilly, who I actually edited a video for, and he says the magic of dolphins, they can emit more than one sound at a time. Like right now, one sound, they can do 4 sounds at a time, and also when they sonar, they're getting an image from the sound into their minds.
But now we've actually been able to take that sonar and see the image. That's what's so cool. Yeah.
Wow. So the future of sound, let's talk it, because your work is moving, it's evolutionary. What is the future?
What new realities is to bring a whole new reality that comes through sound vibration, but it has to be orchestrated. And this is where all of us are co-creators. Unless we can balance our energies through our breathing, through our thinking, through our resonance structure of all of the 7 chakras, which mean wheels within the human fabric, unless we can put together the dynamo of mind over magic, mind over matter, unless we can see consciousness vibration interweaving a new path of life, we're all doomed to, unfortunately, vibratory non-existence.
Well, music has united the world. It can still unite us. That's why the subtitle is Common Sentience. This is a book published by SacredStories Publishing. It's just out now. Any final comments? I mean, it's an infinite topic. But
Right. I'd like to just say a few important things. First
Yes.
of all, yes, I do believe that sound can help calm your mind, which in that case can also help heal your mind, put you in a greater state of awareness, and also in some cases, when you find the right frequency or combinations of frequencies, because it's really just not one anymore, we've determined it's multiple, then you can even help align your body with who you are, and that helps heal your physical body. And another point that's interesting is we point out in this book was the astronauts when they were first
Eugene Cernan and others.
on the backside of the moon. They heard some very interesting
Really?
signals, and they actually have recorded it and released that.
That it music even sounds outer spacey, doesn't it? Do you hear that? That whistling sound?
So the next chapter in space requires an understanding of the music that is there.
Even space has sound frequencies that you can hear, and that's what NASA did. And now NASA has the music of the spheres that it's analyzed by taking certain planets and transforming the frequencies of those planets into something that we can hear. It's an algorithm that they use, and so literally there is the music of the spheres, the music of the body, and the music of the planet around us and all the animals and plants.
So the end of the book presents a whole series of mantras or sacred chants that we would like you to use, because unless you can energize yourself with the keys of the greater music of the universe, coming primarily through the ancient cultures, the Hebrew, the Aramaic, the Greek, the Coptic, the Sanskrit, the Tibetan, unless you understand these are the great cultures because these are the great sounds, and you are a temple of the divine or Holy Spirit, we're just talking abstract notions.
Yeah.
And so I want to share with you a vibration. As a
Yes.
cantor, I want you to listen very carefully. Feel the quavers and semi-quavers as golden light coming from the top of your head throughout your body, your spinal system, and then recycling through the back side of the spine, going upwards, back from the occipital to the frontal area, and visualize what we'll call a pyramidal capstone of golden light over your head. This is the basic symbol you find in the great cultures, the Mayan, the Aztec, the ancient Egyptian, even in China, the Oriental cultures. The pyramid was really the magic marker, the sacred geometry of breath, music, and sacred spiritual teaching all together. Listen, I'm going to use the mantra of Adonai Shema, which means the Lord is present. It's the realization that we connect our mind with the sacred source, the sacred mind of the universe, known to the prophets, particularly those of Western civilization, as the Lord God, Adonai Shema. Listen and visualize the golden light. Adonai Shema. Adonai Shema. Adonai Shema. Taking a deep breath, feel the sound touch the base of your spine. Feel little sparks of energy come up the spine, centered in your heart, which is your hidden mind, and flowing throughout your body, which is the DNA network, which is your third mind. And feel the words of King David in Psalm 51 when he speaks of the mind and spirit converging into the willing spirit, the new spirit, and the Holy Spirit. And thus we realize we are the temple of spirit. And without this breathing, without this vibration, of sacred space within our physical human form, we can never attain what the ancients understood as the voice of the eternal speaking within us. The sounds of beauty broadcasting from within us to the greater cosmos. And the voice from the angelic kingdom we will call now the ultra-terrestrial intelligence, speaking through the music of the spheres, as the Greek philosophers spoke of it, into the heartbeat of every pulse, every mantra, every joyous reflection, that we are discovering the divine and the human sharing the same divine language.
Beautiful, beautiful. So get this book. It's a very important message to the world about the magic of creation, the ability to feel and hear and transmit vibrations is one of the most precious experiences of human beings. Why not get a further education about it from this book?
Right, it's available on Amazon.com, and in addition, as I mentioned, part 2 has various people who've contributed, such as Stephen Halpern and my friend Brad Pitt and Darren Curtis. And
as well as Eureka Granoger from Europe.
And Soren Michael White, he's a really great person who tunes into different frequencies. So this is a really valuable book, Sacred Stories Publishing.
So this is the time of soul symphonies, synergistic symphonies, and, shall we say, a whole new drama of the gathering of the 12 tribes of humanity into spiritual unity through music.
And sound will pull the world together in a universe. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm Alan Steinfeld, along with Drs. JJ and Drs. Desiree Hurtak.
And see us on New Realities.
Thanks for watching.
See the programs.
Thanks so much. See you next time.